The Man in the Burlap Sack, Chapter 1, The Waffle Express. Last stop, the Waffle Express, dead center in a pit-stop town. The type of place where only oil, fumes, dust, and a mixture of various grimes from passing trucks ever settles for long. Forever in some spots, not necessarily the cold, damp places that rarely saw sun, but in whatever place that had a strong enough spite to reject every imaginable type of shitty weather. I wish the spite etched in my own weathered face could muster a bold middle finger to ward off the lashings of time and tide that ground me into this translucent skeletal reflection. I was less than half the man I used to be. I was a marked man, a ticking time bomb with a kick-me sign and a Dear John toe tag already filled out by the Grim Reaper. I was all out of moves, all out of cards to play, except for one last Hail Mary that was more like a promise of redemption than anything else, and surely, no matter what became of it, I couldn't be sure the potential fruits of my labors would unfurl with positive results. I parked out back by the dumpster and walked around front, hugging the wall like it was radiating warmth or something, but really, it was colder than the taste of snow that filled the air. Soon as I rounded the corner, there she was, shivering by the entrance, wrapped in a shawl old as her grandma, taking the last few drags off a ladyfinger cig. The ashtray by the door had half a dozen more jackknifed into grody sand, with that same shade of moist ruby lipstick slathered on the butts. Red made her pout pop off her pale, full cheeks with a boldness that couldn't be ignored. She caught a glimpse of the crook in my nose when I tilted up the brim of my hat. A brief smile flashed with immediate recognition. I was just another one of her no-name regular customers. Been a couple months now since I passed through, but it didn't matter. She'd never forget a consistent over-tipper like me. And we always had meaningful dialogue. It sounded more like foreplay for nerdy brainiacs than inappropriate, unwanted advances from some road junkie, but that's exactly why I kept coming back, why she remained so receptive, so genuine. There was a healthy intrigue behind all of her non-flirtatious feedback. Wish I could say she was mine, but we never crossed that bridge. We were both all business with that same kind of sadistic no pleasure for me mentality. Like neither of us had the time or felt like we deserved it. Something healthy, something safe, something stable. Well, she was damn sure going to hear how I felt about that now that the end of my personal chaotic lifestyle was reaching out for the brass ring of a critical mass moment. There was no going back. I was fully committed. And if rubber rooms and straitjackets are still a thing, I should be tossed into both. That wouldn't stop me shouting from mental rooftops who I was in the hopes that she would hear my hollow voice in every twisted dreamscape. But this was happening now, in reality. Her blasé penchant for listening would be put to the test. I keep repeating, I have to make her listen. Whether she wants to or not, she has to. She's obligated. This is her territory. She wears it like cloak and skin, something to slip into and disrobe from, with the same measure of ease. 8 or 9 years now, 11 to 7, night shift, the only server, just her and some ex-military cook turned sad sack drug dealer, a Joe Schmo who's thankful to be out on parole. It was hit or miss, this place. Gangbusters during heavy travel times, Deadsville over holidays. The only luck I had was ho ho ho. Right now was the latter. A cold howling wind kissed my ass while an off-pitch cowbell greeted my wax-free ears as I pushed between double-glass doors for the very last time. The clangor was a replacement from the way it sounded, too big for the dead thud of a hairline crack in the cast brass shell surrounding it. Annoying as hell to someone with refined musical tastes such as I, but equally effective as a grating alarm clock when it came to doing its job, informing disgruntled workers that a new trucker has arrived. Only I don't have a handle on a rig or sling slang over a CB radio. I normally drive a rental car whenever I'm passing through, an economy sedan, but tonight, big blowout blitz on a pre-dawn horizon, I was driving a hot rod, as in stolen. This was very much by design, a stall tactic maneuver just to buy a little time. And the object of my affections would need a getaway car, preferably something that couldn't be traced back to her so long as she followed my explicit instructions. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself now. Let's get back to her. Who she is and who she isn't, and why I chose to unlock her in my sights for all of the above. Her name's Phaedra. At least that's what her name tags displayed consistently since the first time she spilled coffee on me 15 months ago. I have no reason to doubt the veracity of that little plastic plate that slightly melted and faded from accidental trips through washers and dryers. She's a consummate professional, just like me. There's no doubt she can dish it out as well as she can take it, but she reserves the right to fling feces only for extreme cases that truly need a checkup from the neck up. She has no idea when she jangles back inside, when she starts the long stride toward me in my usual corner booth, that all 12 security cameras are working hard to capture our interactions for future posterity. But the cold, undiscerning digital apertures of webcams and their seemingly omniscient parallax views cannot possibly see the real Phaedra, not the way I do, with the compassion of another wounded, emotionally damaged human being, one whose faults are worn like hearts on sleeves, teardrop tattoos on an innocent victim locked in prison for killing others on the mean streets of survival. How many times did I break the law just for a morsel, a mouse-sized kibble, a scrap of info that a dumpster dog would reject for being a slimy, putrid chunk past its expiration date? Not that there was anything particularly nutritious during the process of trying to get to know her, but it was certainly odd, and if I can take the liberty of stepping outside myself, completely out of character. In 25 years' worth of private investigations, I've never once pried into the life of someone who wasn't either a suspicious client on the borderline of burn town or the subject of their own obsession, that is, the clueless paramour, the guilty partner, and, in extremely rare instances, the legitimately innocent party that I've been hired to stalk. Make no mistake, PIs are most definitely stalkers. We're legally allowed to do so, but really it's just another loophole in a faulty system that's been so blasted by shotgun pellets that Swiss cheese looks like a solid wall when it's held up to a bright light. The difference is, we're not predators, usually. We cling tight to shadows, let the wind whisper above us, peer out of the darkness, or hide in plain sight with a completely objective frame of mind. Really, the proper opinion of an ideal gumshoe should be, I could really care less. On a good day, we're able to gather a handful of relevant facts. On a bad day, we're just bored out of our wits, breaking even on the case, logging endless hours until we're properly paid. That day comes when 80% of the time we deliver bad news. 15% of the time, an ambivalent report. And a scant few times, a truly happy day hallelujah, replete with hugs and kisses, boners and a bonus. A full reprieve from the governor before fat flips from a frying pan into a fire. So again, to clarify, a private eye is a stalker who never makes that final leap into becoming a predator who acts upon the knowledge they've acquired. We never, ever, never, ever pray. Not because we've all become atheists and learned from observation what a cold, cruel world we live in, but because, like an order of monks, we're tasked with sacred duties, transcribing every consciously chosen word on a scroll for whoever foots the bill. We're obligated to uphold this sacramental seal of our priesthood with dignity, even though it straddles alongside pride. So I crossed the line. I wish I could say it was a necessary evil, an exception to our rule, but I'm guilty as sin, unrepentant. I dug in the dirt and I dug down deep for entirely selfish reasons. But for her sake, I'm masking them under the one disguise that trumps all others: self-sacrifice. My only hope is, if I could catch a dandelion seed, throw a penny in a well, or wish upon a star, that the unforeseen results of my heinous actions work out for her, and that somewhere within the reserves of her being, she can rise above hating the man who took advantage of her misery, that she can forgive me, the man she never knew, the man who knew so much about her he could describe in every detail her every move. For instance, getting back to when she came inside the Waffle Express, just a scant 30 seconds after my arrival, an indication that she was lonely, that she was glad to see me, anxious to begin our reacquaintance. Like every time was the first time, with so many days between our last encounter, except we were already good friends who could pick up right where we left off with seamless ease into a comfortable discourse. The way Phaedra sauntered toward me with a warm smile, rubbing her arms to conceal the shivers beneath her shawl. She was on her period, and the pain from her injury was almost unbearable, the way old people curl up into their arthritic bones and struggle just to move. The number of butts in the ashtray outside told me how often tonight she's tried to escape the gravity of a body that's left her mind in a bind. The doctors did an excellent job with the 3 successive surgeries she had to reconstruct the left side of her face. 2 of the scars, where they had to peel back her skin flaps like a latex mask, were partially concealed by her 1940s-style hairdo. A thick wave of bottled burgundy hair swooped down and curled back in front of her ear. Light play and movement made them nearly imperceptible. The other scar looked more like a faint stretch mark with minor tributaries a la crow's feet. This was where her cheek was smashed down on a cold sidewalk and repeatedly rubbed into broken glass and beer along the curb. Her right ear was damaged too, and she lost some hearing from all the punches that mangled more of her flesh, but beyond turning sinister shades of black and blue, she recovered without visible remnants to haunt her. The humiliation and emotional damage were plenty enough. Oh, but there's more. Several years' worth of physical therapy for the torn cartilage and destroyed rotator cuff in her right shoulder, where Skeeter used his kung fu skills to flip her at an awkward angle and bent her into an even more inhuman position that no yoga master or contortionist would ever attempt. This painful maneuver kept Phaedra from having any chance of escaping the assaults. Since he was easily double her weight and a foot taller with combat boots, layers of hatred, and the kind of perpetual seething that lends itself well to explosive behavior, there is often no shut-off valve, a totally destructive lack of control with this personality type. Her arm bears witness to this. The joint where her bicep locks with her shoulder blade was ravaged to the point of atrophy. The integrity of her muscle was compromised beyond the point of usefulness. Was Phaedra a magnet for this type of cretin? Was she drawn to this type on some innate level that sprang from her upbringing? Or was the Skeeter male an aesthetic choice born from an inner need for constant drama and excitement? Either way, she'd be the first to admit it takes 2 to tango, meaning she didn't help her own cause by breaking up with him and showing up the following weekend with a new guy at their favorite watering hole, knowing full well he'd be there. The report from the arresting officer quoted Skeeter saying, "She was intentionally mocking me, looking my way all night, laughing out loud, pretending to have fun, taunting me. I would have left it alone, but this punk had to show off for her. I'm sure she put him up to it. Didn't turn out too well for him, did it?" He broke the guy's nose, beat his face into lasagna, gave him a broken bottle concussion. In court, when he chose to represent himself with other bikers standing by, the judge asked him to state his plea. He said he'd plead guilty if she admitted she was a vindictive whore, not guilty if she claimed she was just an innocent victim. This was one of the most creative two-part answers I've heard, and hate to say it, but a pretty damn accurate assessment of middle gray truth that most couples find themselves in when they opt out of therapy. The stenographer broke away from shorthand dictation to write long form what the judge said with crystal clarity. He addressed the entire audience of 80 people, including those in law enforcement, with a matter-of-fact shtick that sounded like a refined routine. He prefaced with, "I'd like to take the defendant's ambiguous reply as an opportunity to say, people, this is exactly why you need an attorney to represent your ass in court. Please, if you're unfamiliar with the letter of law, the state will provide you with a court-appointed attorney. There's no excuse for deviations from either a guilty or not guilty plea. This is not some multiple choice pop quiz. Your life is on the line. Please take these matters seriously." I've heard this type of rhetoric before, especially from old-timers, but I gotta say, it's this extremist yes or no, black or white, good or evil, right or wrong system of convoluted justice that's a farce. Much as I detest the level of scumbag Skeeter represents, he made a pretty profound, valid point. Shit ain't simple. When emotions come into play and things go sideways, oftentimes there isn't any other way to hash it out without some form of domestic violence. The irony, of course, in so many cases, like the one involving Phaedra, is that the woman who gets abused doesn't always wish to press charges. They flip-flop from being the supposed victim to being like the child of an alcoholic, someone who feels obligated to protect the one who's trespassed against them. Phaedra had no say in the matter. Soon as a third party dialed 911 and the cops arrived midway through the assault, it became the state versus Malcolm Skeeter McKinsey. A serious crime was committed in a public place. There was no mutual consent to the physical attack, no his word against mine that would change the gruesome outcome, no hearsay-ish nonsense that bespoke of anything to justify his relentless onslaught. Involuntary would describe the situation for just about everyone involved, except, to their credit, two dudes from Skeeter's own crew who tried to pry him off the pummeling of Phaedra's face, to no avail. The amount of adrenaline coursing through his rage gave him the focus of a Hulk in a Cat 5 hurricane. She lost a quart of blood on the way to the hospital. Skeeter vomited 3 pints of drought in the community cell at the police station. Nobody would post his bail, not even the only bondsman in the Tri-County area who had a beef with Skeeter for slut-shaming his sister. It's a real downside for small-time criminals in a tiny town that could have literally been called Hicksville, and no one would have complained. So Phaedra began the long, arduous process of self-discovery with fine tooth comb introspection, while the plastic surgeons and cosmetologists debated how to recreate the illusion of one who's whole as well as wholesome. When a mirror shatters, or a psyche, it's a Humpty Dumpty impossibility to smooth out the damage done. Puzzle pieces don't fit right because they were never meant to be fractured from the bigger picture. Even Skeeter wasn't the same. He sat in county jail for 2 extremely long months that were tacked on to the 1.5-year sentence he got from the preachy judge who warned him not to appear in front of him again without proper representation. Phaedra made an unconscious decision at this time to forsake all relationships with men. Even the nice temp guy who tried to puff out his feathers for her sake, wouldn't touch her with a 10-foot French tickler after finding out she was tied by Old Lady Association to the baddest ass biker gang in Texarkana. I say unconscious because she was clearly spooked by what happened, with her eyes wide open to the ever-present threat of what the bad boys can do, since those were the only kind she'd ever consort with. she took to seeking comfort in other women, which didn't work out so well, apparently, because she got taken not once, but twice by female lovers that flowed from the woodwork in the wake of her beating. Once Phaedra learned not to trust anyone in the 100-mile radius of her contaminated environment, she got 2 dogs, a full security camera package, and learned to fire top-of-the-line tasers that she kept on chargers in 3 locations throughout her dilapidated single-wide. Her female Rottweiler mix passed away suddenly from a genetic defect, but her rescue hound Roscoe lived out his normal 12-year lifespan until lymphoma went sepsis and consumed him from within just a few months ago. All these things were in the forefront of my mind as Phaedra exhaled a casual sigh and relaxed her torso into a comfortable, long time no see stance. It was time for her wit to emerge, invisible spotlight on our private play. Smile on her lips, she filled her lungs to ask if I wanted the usual. I cut her off before the words came, not in a rude way, and gestured to the pleather cushion across from me. Please, have a seat. It's important. She could see from my grave expression that it was. There was a split second where she considered denying my request, not out of spite or rebelliousness, but because the unspoken rules of etiquette predicated that a server shouldn't give preferential treatment to any given customer. Her internal argument was eradicated by an utter lack of people in the joint. The only other patrons were local drunkards swaying over black coffee and their meat lover omelets and alternating baubles. She reflexively reached into her pouch and pulled out the mint green check pad that had random cartoon doodles on nearly every page, then cracked her neck slightly to one side while a concerned look washed over her face, emphatically syncing with mine. I could tell she was intelligent enough to grasp, based upon our prior visits, that I wouldn't have asked if I didn't mean it. This explained not only her acquiescence, but the glazed look in her eyes as she straightened out kinks in her peachy uniform and slowly slid down to the very edge of the booth seat across from me. She straightened her posture with consciousness born out of respect and met my eyes with staggered glances until they were steady fixed. I, too, was acutely aware. In fact, there were certain aspects of what I needed to say that were well rehearsed with contingency plans in place should her reactions deviate from the intent of my carefully edited script. I had to realistically recognize, despite all my efforts to think of everything, that there was enough in her wild card nature to hurl some curveball back at me that I never dreamed up could ever see coming. This ever-present uncertainty is exactly what charged this meeting with a raw energy that neither of us could ignore. Perhaps it was electric because our static exteriors were being charged by the same erratic weather that was swooping over the region. A thunderstorm cold front that was whipping water molecules into sleet and snow on the back end of high winds that bordered on tornadic. I didn't want to spook her more than I already had, so I carefully reached across the table without being aggressive and gently touched the soft skin on the back of her hand to let her know everything's going to be all right. She trusted me enough not to flinch, jerk, or pull away, so I casually stole her check pad in a brazen act of thievery with a nod that segued into, "You'll never need this again." My matter-of-fact tone was like an ice dagger that jabbed her brain through her good ear. Turns out, I was the one deviating from the script in my head, and this bit of improv might as well have been a fire alarm sounding, because now she thought perhaps I was some kind of psycho about to abduct her. Well, that wasn't far from certain truths, but far from wanting to impose my will upon her or shackle her in some dank dungeon as a sex slave in a lucrative human trafficking ring. My grand plan was more like an act of liberation. I wanted to give her an actual chance to live a decent life, to set her free, to grant her the power to escape the one thing that truly held her back above all else, herself. I had to speak fast now with lean words and crystal clarity. Hold it, let me explain. Listen to this. I pulled a digital voice recorder from my pocket, set it between us, clicked the on switch, and hit the big triangular play button. There was a little bit of scratchy white noise crackling, but no room for doubt who the main speaker of interest was to her. Skeeter. And it didn't take long to capture her attention when he said, "Piece of shit parole board. It doesn't matter. It doesn't fucking matter. She'll get what's coming to her. Same as Corvo. I wish, Christ, I fucking wish I could be there to ass fuck that bitch and watch her squirm when flames devour that shithole." Corvo, the Ruski mob guy who seized Waffle Express from a lame duck money laundering schmuck who was funneling funds for Skeeter's biker boys when their opioid business went real big time in Boomtown. But the feds snagged Skeeter in a sting, and even though Phaedra hadn't seen or heard from him since their last court date, she was asked to testify against him and verify the names of his associates. He was already heavily involved on a small-time scale back when they dated. Her instinct was to actually protect him and refuse verbal testimony, but an overzealous state's attorney insisted she play ball for her own sake and safety. She didn't know shit, really, but toxicology reports from her hospital stay revealed she had plenty of illegal drugs coursing through her veins, so in exchange for her appearance and corroboration, the state's district court would drop the misdemeanor charges she still hadn't faced that were looping around in continuance hell. Phaedra was thrilled about this because, well, the Golden Calf court system had been sucking her and millions of other suckers dry by ensuring their cases would drag on forever, and thereby the incestuous employees of this racket would keep getting paid over and over to fund their swimming pool soirees, while po folk like her couldn't scrape together enough chump change to fix a leaky faucet. He's talking to this scumbag lawyer here. Skeeter's BFFs keep spoon-feeding coke to this guy. They think jam-packing his nose will get their ace out of jail quicker. I hit play again to resume. Scumbag lawyer. Not so sure your power play here is really what the mumble. How about it? My voice. Well, I will say the Russians don't have many people in this area. It's a juice versus squeeze situation for them. They might send one or two enforcers post facto to send a message, but really, they're more likely to cut and run. Their monetary loss won't be great enough to justify a mass mobilization. Now the look on Phaedra's face. What the hell is my part in all this? The scapegoats brought me in. They hired me to dig up whatever I could about the Russian mob that muffed up their operations. They were looking for some legal way to take back control. Skeeter. All right, then. We torch them week before Christmas. Cops are less active. If I'm going to rot in here, a present like that's priceless. She can live without heat and food stamps a while. Maybe that'll make her think about how good she had it for disrespecting my ass. They kept throwing cash at me. They had plenty without the proper avenues to wash it clean. They had no idea I snuck a micro recorder in federal pen for that last visit. Stashed it in the lining of my hat. I turned it upside down to show her where, thumbing the flap at the exact spot. She inhales with a questioning expression, but again, I preempt her asking with a series of answers. There's no time. I'll explain later. Do you trust me? Her mouth contorts with a creased brow, then sighs with a nod yes. Good. You have to trust me. Your very future depends upon it. She's suddenly incredulous, like I've gone too far. My future? Okay, let me rephrase that. Your life's at stake. Understand? Yeah, but I got a puppy to feed, bills to pay. I cut her off to show her several picture messages from one of my goons. Her puppy in a log cabin, happy as a clam and shit, eating moist food, getting belly rubs, playing with a chew toy. Nobody's face is visible, just back views and hands, etc. Phaedra gasps like I'm some monster who's molesting the Limburg baby. She shoots up, her features contorting with outrage. I'm calling the cops. My hand strikes out to grab her wrist while she's turning to walk away. That's just it, Phaedra. You can't. They're all corrupt. From the judges on down. You know this town. Have you seen police tonight? My words struck a chord. She did know this town, and a sinking feeling wore her like a thespian mask. She hadn't seen any cops tonight, which was unusual. Most nights they were in and out like kids on a carnival ride. You don't know what you're dealing with, completely ignorant. I release my grip as an act of faith. She doesn't run, which justifies my trust. She stares at me for more information that'll convince her I'm not full of shit. Check your bank account. Skeeter bragged about some hacker he hired inside the pen. He remembered enough of your joint passwords, apparently. This fellow could crack through your new ones with some backdoor software. He didn't come out right and say it, but it was clear from his terminology you were not going to make it home tonight. Phaedra pulled a hot new smartphone from her apron and plopped back down. The screen awoke with just a swipe of her fingertip. This latest model captured the fingerprints of anyone who touched the glass and stored them instantly in the cloud. It was a safety measure to discourage criminals from committing crimes when they knew in advance there was more than just DNA to worry about. Her cracked nail tapped through a sequence of numbers and letters on her banking app. Her gasp told the story. But even upside down, I could see goose eggs for both her checking and savings. I slipped on a disposable cotton glove while she was gawking and snatched the phone away before she could react. Hey! In exchange for this thievery, I slapped my own phone down with a colorful tracker app already open. There's no time. See? They're almost here. That steady green light? That's us. The red triangles converging toward us? Just about every biker, every scumbag associate who's in league with your ex. Phaedra stared with a horrified look. A pale, sick feeling drained the flush from her healthy cheeks. It took a while to plant tiny GPS devices on all their rides. I got a bunch in one fell swoop where they conglomerate Sundays at the Rebel Bar and Grill. I expand the view on the screen to reveal a map of the area. The Waffle Express labeled and clearly visible. I zoom back in to touch and hold one of the approaching triangles. A name appears. Brandon. I touch hold another. Jake. Another. Griff. And yet another. Gonzo. Phaedra extends her shaky hand with a quivering finger to press another one. Carmela. She jerks back and looks up all loose-lipped in a numb daze. I pull out a set of shiny keys with a rental car tag and force them in her palm. Time to go. I stand up to help her out of the booth, but she yanks back down. That's a brand new phone. Give it back. I reach into the deep inside pocket of the tattered army coat I'm wearing and thrust a stack of dirty Benjis in her outstretched hand. There's plenty more where that came from. Now listen. I clutch her shoulders and force her to focus beyond the wild rabbit fears that consume her. The cook comes out of the kitchen to watch, not sure what I'm doing or if he needs to intervene. Even the drunkards have swiveled to observe from their stupors. You have to trust me. It's crucial you disappear for a while. Off the grid. That means no phone, no contact with any friends or family. Where the hell am I supposed to go? The cook doesn't like our body language or the fact Phaedra's in distress. He snags an iron skillet off the stove top, hurries toward us. The big guy's faster than he looks. I got just a split second to draw my Glock from a shoulder holster, cock it, and point. Everyone knows I'm not fucking around anymore when I roar, "Drop it! On your knees!" to Ivan, the Ruski's underpaid bitch. Phaedra suppresses a scream and freezes despite her instinct to bolt. The drunkards, however, don't have this ability to censor their guts. They scramble with less than graceful janglings into the fresh-falling flurries outside, then slip and slide across the parking lot with its strobe effect lampposts until they're swallowed by the blackness beyond old gritty snowdrifts. There's a tense, awkward silence. This could go in a bad direction if I don't man the helm with absolute authority. Ivan's panning on his knees, but he's still gripping that frying pan like it's grafted to his skin. I said, "Drop it." Ka-clangle-dangle-dang, it twirls to a stop. I vice grip Phaedra's bicep and guide her, ow, ow, ows, around the cook, past all the booths, and hurry the length of the countertop to kick through the kitchen doors. 40 minutes ago, I placed a large order for pickup, and there it is, slow cooking in a paper bag under heat lamps. I didn't know if she'd found time to eat yet and didn't want her starving on the trek she had to make, so that's one more thing I had to think of in my feeble effort to look out for her. I grab the food and speak with an urgency that she can't ignore. I intentionally squeeze her arm to cause pain in sync with key words. My hope is she'll associate any bruises that develop with the critical nature of this dire situation. There's a car out back. You're going to drive 5 miles west of here to Whitman's garage. You know where that is? She nods with a distressed look, still not sure if this is really happening. I push the release bar on the back exit, and suddenly we're out on the cold concrete slab of an icy loading dock with large flakes swirling around us in a wintry vortex. I gave you the keys to a rental car parked in the side lot. Listen, there's a bag on the front seat. Everything you need is in that bag. Understand? I know it sounds like I'm patronizing her intelligence, but you have to realize she's traumatized now, drifting through various states of awareness. Do you understand? She nods an emphatic yes that reveals her irritation, pissed that she has absolutely no control. You'll stay on the main highway the whole time till you reach the Peacock Motor Inn about 90 miles west of here. Room 7's booked for 2 days. You'll hang tight there until I shock myself by welling up with strange mixed emotions. Look, just stay there till it's time to check out. If something happens to me, you'll find instructions in that bag I mentioned. Phaedra manages to stammer a but, laced with several questions, but it's hard for her to talk when I'm spinning her around to wrap her snug in my battered coat. I herd her into the driver's seat of a souped-up candy apple El Dorado that has major muffler issues. Toss that to-go order on the passenger side and lean across her torso to crank the ignition. You'll be fine, trust me. She turns on the wiper blades at a reflex, which is really the first sign she's embracing the moment. Her annoyed reply speaks otherwise. I don't know what to say. What do you want me to say? My mouth hangs open long enough for flakes to melt on my cheeks and dissolve on my tongue. An unscripted wave washes over me, and I crouch to make eye contact at her level. It's too late for words, but I want you to know I fell madly in love with you first time we met. I know who you are. I can see through your pain. I'd do anything for you, anything at all. Whatever disbelief she felt converts instantaneously, like a holy spell's been cast, with a rapture vibe that swoops us both into a slow, deep kiss. And just like that, she's mine. Our lips smack away with the pleasant warmth of perfect suction. I give her a solemn nod that carries with it a prayer for her safe passage, then slam shut the door and double pound the roof with my fist. She throttles the gas to see what she's got, and I can't help but smile when I catch a glimpse of a solitary tear streaming down her cheek as she peels off to face shitty weather on a shitty night. But for some ungodly reason, nothing ever felt more right.